Welcome to the Fearful Fright series, where we will be reading with our favorite green ghoul, Grimmer. Now sit back and enjoy this twisted tale. Today our story is called The Story of Grimmer. Everyone in the town of Black Hollow trusted Martin Hale. He had soft gray eyes, thinning brown hair he kept neatly parted, and a voice that never rose above a gentle hush. As head librarian of the old Black Hollow Public Library, he moved through the aisles like a careful ghost, straightening crooked spines and smoothing torn pages with reverent fingertips. Children adored him. Parents respected him. The town council praised him for keeping the century-old building alive despite budget cuts. What no one knew was that Martin Hale had been stealing from them for years. It began small, misfiled invoices, padded supply orders, repairs that were never made. The library's old brick roof still leaked during storms, yet the maintenance funds vanished like breath in winter air. Martin told himself he deserved it. He worked long hours. He sacrificed his youth for that building. He was the library. But the theft grew bolder. Thousands of dollars slipped quietly into offshore accounts. He convinced himself he would return it someday. That he was simply borrowing. The truth came out on a storm-heavy night in October. The town accountant, a sharp-eyed woman named Lillian Moore, arrived unannounced. She had documents in hand and suspicion in her voice. Martin panicked. They argued in the dim glow of green-shaded lamps. Rain battered the tall windows. Thunder rattled the old rafters. Lillian threatened to call the police. Martin stared at the shelves surrounding him, the towering stacks of stories he had catalogued for decades. The thought of being dragged out in handcuffs, of losing his library, hollowed him out. So he did something monstrous. He locked the doors. He poured old cleaning alcohol across the wooden floorboards. And with trembling hands, he struck a match. The fire spread too fast. Faster than he had imagined. Faster than regret. Flames leapt up shelves lined with brittle paper. Smoke swallowed the ceiling. Lillian's screams were cut short beneath a falling beam. Martin tried to run, but the front doors were already engulfed. The heat blistered his skin. The books he loved curled and blackened, their pages screaming in the roar of the blaze. The last thing Martin Hale saw was the fiction section collapsing inward like a closing mouth. Black Hollow mourned him. They called him a tragic hero who died trying to save the library. They rebuilt on the same ground. They never found Lillian Moore's body. And for 13 nights, the ashes beneath the new foundation whispered. On the 14th night, something crawled out. Martin Hale opened his eyes in the ruins of the old building. But he did not breathe. His body was whole, yet wrong. Skin pale as dust, veins dark as ink beneath the surface. The world around him was colorless, drained of warmth. Before him stood something that wore no shape. It was tall and bent, as though folded inward. Its surface rippled like smoke pressed into the form of a man. Two dim red embers glowed where eyes might be. You destroyed stories, it said, its voice layered, hundreds speaking at once. You silenced truth. Martin tried to scream, but no sound came. You will gather what you burned. The creature stretched out a limb that split into jagged tendrils. You will collect every story born of fear. Every whispered horror. Every death unspoken. Martin felt something burrow into his chest. It coiled around his ribs like barbed wire. And I will remain with you. When he looked down, he saw it, a smaller shape, clinging to his shadow. A thin, spindly creature no larger than a child, with ink-black skin and a grin carved too wide. Its eyes were pits that reflected screaming faces. It giggled. I am Grimmer, it croaked. And the punishment began. Martin could no longer die. Fire did not burn him. Blades did not cut him. Hunger gnawed but never consumed. He walked the earth unseen by most, drifting from tragedy to tragedy. When a mother wept over a child lost in a frozen lake, Grimmer lapped at the air and whispered, "Write it." When soldiers fell screaming in forgotten wars, Martin felt their final thoughts etch themselves into his mind. When killers hid bodies beneath floorboards, when hospitals dimmed lights over silent beds, when shadows moved where they should not, Martin was there. He carried an ancient ledger now, bound in charred leather that never ran out of pages. The stories wrote themselves. He could not stop them. Each time terror struck somewhere in the world, Grimmer grew stronger. The creature fed on fear like a parasite. It perched on Martin's shoulder, its long fingers tapping against his skull. Faster, it would hiss. We're missing one in Prague. A house with no doors. Martin saw everything. A girl who heard scratching inside her walls for years until something scratched back. A man who woke every night at 3:17 a.m. to the sound of breathing that wasn't his own. An entire village that vanished under a red sky, leaving only shoes behind. The ledger filled. Decades passed. Martin never aged. He tried to resist once. He tried to ignore a story, a small one, a boy who insisted something stood at the end of his bed each night. Martin walked away. Grimmer shrieked. Pain tore through Martin's body as if invisible hooks dragged him backward through glass. His bones bent. His skin split without bleeding. You do not choose, Grimmer snarled. You collect. Martin crawled back. He wrote the boy's story as the creature at the bed finally leaned close enough to smile. Over time, Martin understood the true cruelty of his punishment. He did not simply record horror. He preserved it. The ledger was not passive. Every story written strengthened the memory of the event in the world. Like ink sealing fate. He had become the keeper of terror. And Grimmer was evolving. It grew taller. Its grin widened until it split its face nearly in half. Inside its mouth were rows of tiny human teeth. You know what we are building? Grimmer asked one night as they stood over a city trembling beneath sirens. A record, Martin whispered. A library. Martin froze. Grimmer's body stretched upward, towering now, no longer small. Its limbs scraped the clouds. A library of fear, it said. Greater than the one you burned. The realization crushed him. This was never about punishment alone. The entity that resurrected him had needed a curator. Someone who understood stories. Someone who loved them. Grimmer was not merely collecting horrors. It was preparing them. The ledger, now massive and impossible to close, began to hum. Voices leaked from its pages at night, whispers, sobs, laughter that scraped like bone on stone. One evening, standing on the edge of Black Hollow once more, Martin saw something that chilled even his immortal heart. The rebuilt library's lights flickered. Inside, children read quietly. Parents browsed. The shelves looked normal. But between the stacks, something moved. Shadows stretched too long. And at the center table sat a new book no one remembered placing there. Its cover was black. Its title etched in silver. The Story of Grimmer. Martin staggered inside. No one saw him. The book opened on its own. The first page described a librarian who burned down his own library. The next page described his resurrection. The next described a creature named Grimmer. The words continued, detailing moments that had not yet happened. A future filled with libraries in every city, each containing a single black book. Each book whispering. Each whisper seeping into readers' minds. Fear spreading like spores. Grimmer's reflection appeared in the glossy page. It was enormous now, its body stretching beyond the building, beyond the sky. You thought you were collecting stories, it murmured. You were planting them. Martin understood then. The ledger did not just record horror. It inspired it. The more people read the collected fear, the more fear grew. The more fear grew, the more stories were born. An endless cycle. And at the center of it stood him. Grimmer leaned close, its mouth brushing Martin's ear. You burned one library, it whispered. Now we will build an infinite one. Martin tried to tear the book apart. It would not rip. He tried to scream a warning. No sound came. A child approached the table. A small boy with curious eyes. He opened the black book. And he began to read. Martin felt the first new story forming already, inside the boy's mind. A shadow at his window. A scratching under his bed. Grimmer laughed, a sound like thousands of pages tearing at once. You are immortal, it said gently. You will watch every story unfold. Martin fell to his knees as the library lights flickered again. In every corner of the world, somewhere, someone felt suddenly afraid. And in his endless ledger, new ink began to flow. The story of Grimmer was only the beginning.